Welcome to the Poetry Box Live. I'm Shawn Aveningo Sanders, and I'm thrilled you could join us today for a little poetry. For those of you who may be tuning into our show for the first time, my husband Robert and I run an independent press here in Beaverton, Oregon, known as the Poetry Box, where our mission is to help spread the love of poetry by curating and publishing work that stirs our senses. In addition to publishing poetry books and collaborating with writers from all over the country, we also hold a chapbook contest every year. And our ninth annual contest is currently underway, and the last day to enter is tomorrow at midnight. I'll share more details about that at the end of today's show. Part of our commitment to our authors is to help them reach a larger audience through our Zoom shows. And today we're celebrating National Women's Month with four fabulous female poets whose work embodies the acts of witnessing and nurturing the world, each other, and ourselves. We have Debbie Hall, who is joining us from San Diego, California. Angelika Quirk will be reading to us from San Rafael, California. Priscilla Bernard Wieden is sharing poetry from here in Portland, Oregon. And Julie Potiker is bringing us her poems also from San Diego. So let's get started with our first featured poet. Debbie Hall is the author of Mixtape, Marginal States, a powerful collection that gives voice to those who exist just outside the mainstream of society. Debbie is a former psychologist whose poetry has appeared in Hawaii Pacific Review, Arlington Literary Journal, Pulse Voices from the Heart of Medicine, and many other literary journals and anthologies. Her books include What Light I Have, published by Main Street Rag, Falling into the River, a Poetry Box Chapbook Prizewinner, and In the Jaguar's House, which is a collection of wildlife photography and poems for children. Her essays have appeared on NPR and USD Magazine and the San Diego Union Tribune. She holds an MFA in writing from Pacific University in Oregon and is a poetry editor with Writers Resist. Please welcome Debbie Hall.
Thank you so much, Shawn. All right, I do want to start by thanking Shawn for this awesome design on the cover, which I think really captures the landscape of a lot of these poems. So really appreciate her artistry and thoughtfulness in putting that together. All right, I'm actually going to introduce the first section of the book with a quote from Susan Sarandon, well-known actor, and also I think probably a social activist as well. And her quote is, "If you walk down the street and see someone in a box, you have a choice. That person is either the other and you're fearful of them, or that person is an extension of your family." So the first poem I'm going to read is called Sonnet for Homeless Woman Named Beth. Her hands speak in tongues, flutter in the air, promenade across her chest, and spotlight the words written with a Sharpie on her shirt. B is for beauty. B is for Beth. Her long white hair waterfalls out of a Padres ball cap as she tips it and blows kisses to each passerby who smiles at her. Beth's neighborhood of small tents and blue tarps lines 16th Street just south of Petco Park. A ribbon of chain link and razor wire keeps the freeway at bay. Forms a laundry rack. On the corner, a shuttered market. Tacked to a telephone pole, a sign. We'll pay cash for diabetes test kits. Thank you. And the second poem I'm going to read in this section is titled, I Know I Watch Too Much 911. I don't know if any of you have seen that show. I know I watch too much 911 when I cross a 6-lane road, blaring traffic on my way to get coffee, and visualize the trajectory my body would take were it slammed by a semi running the red, or imagine being caught in the cross of someone's bitter impulse at a shopping mall, subway station, or schoolyard. Perhaps I'm just trying on the possibilities as a weird sort of prep for the apocalypse. I walk past a blue tarp wrapped around what could be a body next to a culvert. On 911, first responders would hear a faint breath, unspool the victim, and pump his chest back into life. Like that. In real life, anyone could be a first responder, uniformed or not, right? I once saved a childhood friend from drowning in the deep end of a pool, though it didn't seem like that much to me at the time. She still begs to differ. Outside the Starbucks, a young woman is crouched by a cat carrier, open at the top. I expect to see kittens needing homes, anticipate my longing to touch a small back of soft fur once again. Instead, there's a half-grown duck slaking its thirst from a porcelain bowl, now on its way to sanctuary. When I imagine being a first responder these days, I see myself gently guiding a grizzled woman across the street, pushing her shopping cart with one hand and carrying her pet cat with the other one, before the crosswalk light turns red. I am no longer imagine myself throwing myself in front of a child facing a spray of bullets. I'm older now and likely wouldn't move fast enough to do much good. When I reach the other side of the intersection with the grizzled woman and her cat, I offer her my cup of coffee, which she takes with a palsied hand. I don't know how to read the blank look she gives me before turning to walk away, leaving splashes of dark roast on the ground behind her, oblivious to the sounds of sirens from fire engines careening around the corner. Okay, and one more from this section of the book, which is called Who's to Say It Wasn't? It could have been Jesus walking across Rosecrans Boulevard, barefoot and grubby, wearing a ragged bedspread dyed a rainbow of colors, his shepherd's crook doubling as a weapon with its whetted hook. The streets can be mean, after all. Even Jesus can't be too careful these days. Who's to say he wasn't shouting scripture, not gibberish? After all, doesn't it take close listening to hear the true message? Were I to stop and talk to him, I'd suggest he get a dog, one that could sniff out the bad actors in the street, make fun friends with the others, make Jesus seem just like an ordinary you or me out for a walk on a sunny day. Feel it blow through us on an offshore wind, the seagulls rowdy swirling all around. Thanks. A friend of mine, another San Diego poet, Jeff Walt, I have to give him credit because he used to sign off his emails with rowdy blessings. And I really like that term, rowdy blessings. So I stole it. You know, poets steal, right? A little bit. Okay, just a preface to this next one by Isaac Newton. We build too many walls and not enough bridges. And this poem was prompted by a news article from 2019 that I was responding to. And I meant to say at the beginning that so much in this book, I think, resonates our current times in a way that I wish it didn't, but there we are. Poetry is. So this is called I Can't Feel My Heart. And the epigraph is by poet Matthew Zapruder. The children sleeping alone in some detention center don't need our brilliant sincerity. It's not enough. And the article I mentioned was the inspector general at the time says separated kids who were separated from their parents were traumatized. And I remember when I read that, I thought, well, duh. It just didn't seem, yeah, revelatory to me. I can't feel my heart. The U.S. Inspector General has discovered a link between separating migrant children from their parents and symptoms of trauma, such as numbness, embodied in children's statements like, I can't feel my heart, or anguish expressed in physical terms, such as every heartbeat hurts, or even delusions, like that 7-year-old boy thinking his father had been killed and he was next up to die. This is not brilliance nor discovery unless you subscribe to the adage, everything old is new again, like what Harry Harlow taught us 50 years ago about long-term suffering caused by being yanked away arbitrarily from moms or dads. Thinking of Harry's infant monkeys trying to warm up to their replacement wire mothers brings to mind the color gray, a good metaphor, don't you think, for the absence of feeling and the actual color of chain link surrounding the migrant kids' makeshift shelters. Even those silver space blankets, which are still gray, just all fancied up and pretty thin on comfort. Lately, I've been wondering where all our so-called better angels have gone. Maybe they stopped off in some dive bar, waiting for us to come back to our senses, and lost track of time, numbing their own hearts with cereal stiff drinks, steeling themselves for the inevitable next parade of small, wounded people, asking us all why, each desperately looking for any open hand, willing to hold theirs while they wait. Okay, one more on this topic. In this goes back to 2016 in San Diego, down near the border. We have a park called Friendship Friendship Park, and there was a special event in April 2016 called Dia del Niño, and the gate to the park opened very briefly, right on the border. Opened briefly on the US-Mexico divide, so that, and they allowed six Mexican American families to visit and hug, actually touch their relatives who were on the other side from them. But they could only do that for 3 to 4 minutes. So this piece was written in response to that. Janet Lorenzo at the Borderfield State Park, Imperial Beach, California, 2016. There will be enough time for her scent to enter your pores, enough time to rekindle sensation, not nearly enough to savor it. The rusty door will whine open, a gate between two prisons. All that is lost will rush in like a chill, while the memory of touch ghosts across your skin. Be ready for the cries of seabirds to catch in your throat. Their wing beats a warning. Don't stay too long. Be grateful for this opening between nations. Hug, kiss, and hold your mother in that order. Follow the rules. Believe in the future as you pull apart, even as new fences split the earth. Ball up the photograph of this visit in your fist if you must, but do it gently. Tomorrow, let it unfold like a new prayer. Thank you. Okay, hopefully I'm still doing okay on time. You can give me a nod. All right. So one more sec, because I worked for 40 years as a psychologist, obviously I'm going to have a section that has to do with mental health issues. It's certainly a place that any one of us could find ourselves dealing with at any time in our lives. And so I found an interesting quote on, the whole idea of what is normal or not normal. And this is from Matt Haig, who's author. I should remember what it is he's written, but his quote is, "There is no standard normal. Normal is subjective. There are 7 billion versions of normal on this planet." Thank goodness, though, right? I mean, that makes it a lot more interesting, in my humble opinion. So I have a very dear friend that was unfortunate enough to develop suddenly a seizure disorder late in life, which can certainly cause some mental status changes. So this was written for this good friend, and it's called Questions for the Neurologist. If a seizure stops neurons from communicating, where should they go afterwards to get reacquainted? When my life takes a different direction, how will I find true north? How long can I dance in the rain without slipping? If a rooster crows in the city, is it warning or delight? When a man loses his words in the forest, what songs will the mushrooms sing? Is warm milk a reasonable solution when brain cells are overexcited? Once I go to sleep, which dreams can really be trusted? If the cat does not recognize me, how will I know I still exist? In 70 years of living, have I not earned a quiet mind? If I start speaking in tongues, will anyone believe me? Yeah. All right, two more. And this one is called In the Assisted Living Home. In the assisted living home, William stands naked in the foyer, gripping his walker, fingers shielded from sticky germs by bright purple surgical gloves. Sipping her scotch and water in the living room, my mother raises one eyebrow and her mouth curves into a faint smile as she watches him. It's too damn hot in here, William barks. Perhaps he is counting on shock value to deflect attention from the 30 rolls of toilet tissue, 12 pack of paper towels, and 100 count box of rubber gloves he has pilfered and stashed beneath his bed. And yet, this laying in of supplies may indicate nothing more than William's strong belief in his potential for a long life. Who would not call that a healthy outlook at 98? Who would deny him the privilege of walking naked down the hallway, skin glistening, every motion of his body a triumphant song? And that was based on a real person. All right, last one I'll read is called Elephant Seals. The bags of mulch edging the patio garden look like beached elephant seals in the dusky light. Backs shiny wet from the ocean waves that brought them here. Their deep bleating sounds fill the air. Nabokov once wrote that reality is one of the few words that means nothing without quotation marks. In a far corner of the internet, one can find actresses from the Game of Thrones or Harry Potter engaged in all kinds of intimate acts. The faces in the videos are their own, but everything south of there belongs to different women. Most casual observers won't detect the hoax. In order to do so, we'd have to develop keen eyes for the workings of artificial intelligence. And who has time for that? Most artists I know would side with Neruda, who shrugged off the shackles of the rational mind without one worried look back. Who's to say a woman at Starbucks did not really see Jesus in the foam top of her cafe latte? More importantly, when I see the elephant seals again, what will they remember of the time we spent here together? Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Debbie. I'm going to remember the time we spent here together, that's for sure. Um, Thank you so much for reading In the Assisted Living Home. You know, that's one of my favorite poems. We nominated it for a pushcart, and I love that last stanza. Who would deny him the privilege of walking naked down the hallway, skin glistening, every motion of his body a triumphant song? I love that so much. And I think this whole collection reminds us that every person alive is a triumphant song. And, you know, we have all these tough situations, we have these horrible situations that humans bring on other humans. And I think your book so eloquently reminds us of all these things, but how every single person is of value. And I want to thank you for writing these poems. They are part of what I like to call the empathy machine. They spread empathy by bringing voice to these people, and I just really appreciate it. So thanks so much for sharing with us today, Debbie. Really wonderful. Next up, we have Angelika Quirk, the author of Chaos and Calm, a collection that spans topics ranging from growing up in war-torn Hamburg to the delights and perils of love to poems that display her wit and candor. Angelika was born and raised in Hamburg, Germany. At the age of 18, she immigrated to the United States and graduated from UC Berkeley with a BA in German literature. Her poetry has appeared in various literary magazines, including New York Quarterly, California Quarterly, Translit 2, and the Marin Poetry Center anthologies. Two of her books, After Sirens and Of Ruins and Rumors, and her memoir, Kriegskinder, are in the library of the German American Heritage Museum in Washington, D.C. In a former life, she danced in Totentanz at the Grace Cathedral in San Francisco and was on the record album cover of Germany's Schlager Parade, 1968. A lover of music, collector of words in English and German, she now writes poems about life and living. Her leitmotif, to instill emotions and passions from the surreal to the sublime, from chaos to rhythm to rhyme. It's my pleasure to welcome Angelika Quirk.
Thank you so much for the introduction and for the beautiful book that you designed and for hosting the reading here today. Thank you for everybody that came to the reading online. I'm very pleased to read from my book only, okay? I'll start with the first poem. It's called Tidal Song to the River. When your floodgates open, I want to believe in the impulse of the moment. Ride your tides in an orgy of rippling waters, like a lover caressing me, riding me, unbridled like Valkyries to Valhalla. I want to sing and swim and dive through the sunlit sky of your surface into your currents. I want to fling myself into your bed and reclaim the ritual of innocence. If I could give up the fear of falling, of drowning, I could dive down to your murky depths, even when the sun blinds me, or float to your mouth and spill into the vast sea. Monologue with self. When I wake up in the morning, my thoughts drift like shadow dancers of the night before, once hiding in crevices and corners on the blank walls of my room. I need coffee and the scent of rosemary to face today's affairs and yesterday's prognosis. I don't want spirits of the deceased grinning through the open shutters, mocking me, and dawn unwilling to give up its gauze. Yet I need a fix, cracks in my ceiling, smudges on windows. I wrote a letter to God about my psyche running amok. Slipping away last night, could I check in the nearest psych ward, the nearest morgue? At this early hour, there's nothing left, no patience, no bargains, only a broom to sweep ashes and dust under a rug. Plain geometry. My life, a travelogue from east to west, crosses the continents and timelines. I wonder what formula can solve this helter-skelter journey when each stop on a plotted line is an unknown. At times, my angular attitude is more than 90 degrees obtuse as I poke at the curve of each passing day. As I peruse the focal points in the ellipses of my mind, I often lose sight of my goal, my last day. I had hoped I could bargain with pi, though irrational, yet lurking around each circle, to acquire eternal life, like its never-ending digits. I wonder about life, its equations with too many unknowns, yet what would life have been like without possibilities, without arches and expanding circles as it fades ever so slowly into the longitude of sundown? I was born, as you mentioned, in Germany, and I remember my first memories go back to bomb shelters and Hamburg burning and then fleeing the city. I was 18 months old. Maikäferflieg, mein Vater ist im Krieg, meine Mutter ist in Pommerland, Pommerland ist ausgebrannt, Maikäferflieg, Maybug fly, my father is in the war, my mother is in Pommerland, Pommerland is burnt to the ground, Maybug fly. After the war, we had nothing, but so did everybody else on our block. No food, no shoes, only footprints in the ruins of our city. Life was simple then, homegrown vegetables, spoonful of cod liver oil. Yet there was a kick in the unborn in my mother's belly with the child of another man in a world of angst and becoming, all knotted together. On the black market, my sister Ingrid traded with British soldiers trinkets of Nazi memorabilia for sweets and chocolates. My brother Gunnar played in the rubble of hollow houses, collecting splinters from exploded flak shells, like shooting stars from ashen skies. When I sang of my Maybug's fathers at war and Pommerland burning, I learned that certain questions were verboten, only the hush of adult voices. Every day we listened to the radio, the endless lists of the missing. Every night we placed candles on windowsills to guide German soldiers, orphans, the lost in the chaos, the limping, the broken of hearts, back to their families, their homes. A simple life then, if the day was well served with watery soup from the Red Cross and potatoes stolen by my siblings from farms near the Altenland, and finally a letter from a Russian prison. Papa was alive. This was a day of celebration. In spring, crocuses started to bloom, and there was a breeze from the river. That's when we believed in the omen of wind and words. That the next day would be okay, and it was. Finally, the smell of bratwurst and dumpling. My sister was born. My brother Parker returned from the Western Front. Papa returned after 7 years. Now, when I was 18, I immigrated to the US and lived in Manhattan. New York, Babylonian glitter. I was so young, so naive, ill-fitted for life in a big city, the Babylonian glitter of Broadway, with people faceless racing by and high-rise buildings scraping blue skies. Here I was, after crossing the ocean, a stranger and explorer of uptown and downtown, of dancing and dating, renting a room in Webster Apartments on 34th, we renamed Lorelei Rock, a residence for sirens ready to claim new turf, ready to gulp down the sweet wine of excitement, of love, only declined by loners lost in the bustle, the maze, the crisscross map of worries. At a bowling alley in Brooklyn, double dating on a whim with Tony, half Italian, with sleek hair, with lucky strikes blowing out rings of smoke, trying to capture my eyes, but it only irritated them. Stuck in an elevator with Professor Goldstein, with his tenor voice and Schubert love songs, just for me. I pressed all buttons. Finally, the doors opened on the 5th floor. I got off, but for days the hum of strange melodies hovered. Then I met Danny. He gave me a ticket to Lewisohn Stadium, Stravinsky conducting Firebird. When the creature waved its feather, his hand slipped under my sweater. I let him. I loved it. It can happen to anybody. It happened to me. When batons whip the air and winds rise, when the dance on stage sets you whirling, you have to give in. You have to love to live, as if your very essence depended on it, as if this moment, this day were eternity. We visited a lot of cities in Europe, and one of my favorite city is Prague. And in Prague, Rilke and Kafka were born in Prague, that wrote in German. I also write German poetry and have published many. As a matter of fact, 3 of my bilingual poems were published in the LA Journal Review. Kafkanesque Prague, 2018. The day we lost our way in the alleys of the Jewish quarter, wandering from one synagogue to another, we listen to the roll call of the dead from walls and halls, announcing victims of the Holocaust. We heard moans from the Moldau, from arches, the plazas, the towers, where chimes clocked in the hour. We needed angels, we needed redemption, and on the Charles Bridge, where 30 saints stood watch, we rubbed their silver armor for good luck next to crouching beggars, their heads touching the ground. And all this time, Kafka's spirit roaming past narrow alleys followed us along the river, up the steps to his tiny home at Golden Lane, perched against the ancient castle wall, where in the quietude of dusk, metamorphosis escaped, and Kafka slithered down river after midnight, running away from the characters of his own creation. Between the Church of the Holy Spirit and Spanish synagogue, he now sits piggyback on the shoulders of a headless giant, in his black suit and bowler, his gaze fixed, pointing a finger straight at us. That night, I dreamed of a giant cockroach crawling into my bed, and when I screamed, Kafka whispered in my ear, "Murder me, murder me." I read his biography. That's what he said when he was very sick to his nerves, "Murder me." Angel, I want to believe in you, especially during these ashen days. After all, it's not your fault. The fires, paradise lost, your wings clipped, your white gown blotched, even your reputation by a Mad Hatter mind or a patient of delusion, or by us who thought you were a mere illusion. I want to believe in you, even when you wing your way along heavenly paths, ignoring charred hills, dried out creeks, dead fish, and earth's axis that tilts. Creature of light, shadowless, are you the spirit of the midnight shift, taking a leave of absence from daily visits, from sanctifications, benedictions, from saving children from harm? I sometimes try to hear your voice in the tick of sap, the rustle of leaves, in my ancient tree that buds each year, even when crows fraternize on electric wires and squawk. I place a terracotta angel on my patio in your image, the ashes from the fire once singeing your gown, finally gone. Your patina now glitters with silver dew, and when the morning sun hits your face, I yearn to possess your grace. But when I touch your forehead, there's nothing, only a hologram of your eyes and empty air. This one is completely different. It's a wild poem, and I had a lot of imagination with it. Body parts galore. Hip replacements on special, but I'll settle for legs without cellulite, designed by Botticelli. Or better yet, legs with pavlova feet and Madonna thighs, fit for stairmasters and musical chairs. I'll place an order for new hands with lifelines that extend from palm to arm, with Chopin fingers waltzing across black and white keys. In the shop window next door, new eyes stare at me, blue ones, radiant, eyes with long lashes, X-ray visions, and rear-view mirrors to the soul. Tongues blurt out, price cuts, tongues speaking in metaphoric pentameters instead of four-letter words. They click and lick, frolicking across the aisle, where mouths pucker up, smacking their lips, blowing a kiss, to Munchian screams and Mona Lisa smiles. Behind a glass between megabrains, Michelangelos next to Einsteins and Sapphos and Platos, auctioned off to the highest bidder, a brain on discount in the far corner with lots of creases in the upper lobes, size 9, just right to fit in my skull. Then I see souls on sale, some lighter than air, some thinner than sin, souls of popes, of poets, of dreamers, of angels hovering overhead. I wave to them. One of the souls lowers its wingtip, brushes against me, then takes my name tag and suddenly ascends. And my last poem is called A Final Dot. On the last page of my journal, I scribble in faint loopings the uphill and downhill escapades of my roller coasting mind. All this time, I've been waiting for stars to shoot through decades to the umbilical beginning, the beginning of my plum tree, my rose, thorns, hallelujahs, and love. Now I wait for a voice, an angel, a god, for something, anything to lead me on. I wait in my garden like a patient, breathing in the potion of lavender and sunlight. At night, I drink the Milky Way to quench my thirst for the calming dark. And I wonder, after death, life, a new beginning, to meet my mother somewhere in heaven, or become a raven, a moth, a falcon. Sometimes I think of the origin of Earth, the universe, whirling, circling in my head. But then it stops. No more thoughts, no more words. Only a final dot like the farthest star. Maybe Arendelle, the star of dawn, 12.9 billion light years away. A blink into eternity. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Angelika. That was lovely. I love that line in one of the poems you read about when you were young. When we believe in the omen of wind and words, that the next day would be okay. I just it was such a horrible, ugly period in history, and yet this line is just filled with hope. And I think that's something that we always struggle to hang on to, especially these days. But your poems exude such a tenacity for living life to its fullest. And you'll have to let us know when that Bodies Galore store is having a sale, okay? Thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Okay.
Our next poet today is Priscilla Bernard Wieden, author of Solitary Light Mourning Poems, her debut poetry book where she shares her journey through grief after losing her beloved husband. Priscilla is a lifelong poet and arts education and environmental advocate. She is celebrated for her active engagement in Portland's vibrant artistic community and contributions to Caldera, an award-winning year-round program for underserved youth dedicated to nurturing creative and environmental education. She also currently serves on the Board of Literary Arts and on the Board of Trustees for Wieden and Kennedy. Priscilla is a proud mother, grandmother, and gardener who stays immersed in issues of social justice and stays actively engaged in the world. Please welcome Priscilla Bernard Wieden.
Thank you, Shawn. Hello, and thank you to everybody that's taking your Saturday afternoon to be here. I feel so humbled to be in the presence of all these poets, so thank you for being here. I wouldn't be here without Shawn, who gave me the opportunity to be brave, and Robert, who took the idea of, I don't know if you can see that, of the lighthouse and made it beautiful, and of my friend Marnie, who introduced me to Shawn and wouldn't let me chicken out of this even when I wanted to. So thank you all for making this possible. In the February Poetry Box reading, I heard Shawn say that Billy Collins is why I started writing poetry. So I started thinking, why did I start? And I realized I have no idea why I started. I've just been writing as long as I can remember. But it was more of a journal. It wasn't, it was very private and personal, my poetry, and I've never really shared it much with anybody. But when I agreed to let these very private poems be published, my hope was that one poem may help one widow or one widower through their journey of mourning the death of their beloved. That's what this book is about. Let's see. I'm going to cut to the chase so I can read poems and not rattle on. I call this book a lyrical memoir of the year of mourning after my husband's death. And so it's uncurated. It's not a curated book of poetry. It's just a story. So for anybody who makes it all the way through the book, you will see a thread of well, certainly a lot of sadness, but a thread of hope and survival and strength. So that's why I did it. It was hard to choose because it is a story. So I tried to choose poems that showed the wave, the choppy sea. And so there'll be one about despair, and then maybe a glimmer of hope, and then another one about despair. And so hopefully it makes somewhat, kind of sense as a story about mourning. They're called mourning poems, Mourning. Fortunate Sailor. Oh, the pull of hiding out, hiding from questions and answers, from chatter and silence, from knowing and disbelief that he's gone. As though the deep tidal sea has hold on my soul and wants to pull me under. I'm hiding. Take me away from this place of pain, of despair, like the sea takes the sailor, fortunate enough to jump. So that was within a week after we buried Dan, and it was pretty dark. Within 3 days, another poem came through, and it was called Gratitude. So I was grateful for this. Shawn, are you crying? You can't be crying because I will cry if you cry. Gratitude. I am immensely grateful he waited for me to return home from travel, as though he understood everything perfectly. I am grateful he collapsed into the arms of a tender caregiver, as though he knew he needed a hand right then. I am grateful for the big, strong paramedics who lifted him so gently back to bed, as though they knew he needed to simply be in my arms. I am grateful that all of our children could come to surround him with love, as though we all awaited and feared that day. I am grateful he opened his eyes the next day and said, "Good morning, I love you," as though it was every other morning of our life together. I am grateful that his pain lasted only one short and endless week, as though to give the gift of his life to our family one last time. I am grateful for the magic that allowed him to be buried, to be returned to Mother Earth in the way that he had spoken about, as those stars, planets, moons aligned to give him exactly what he wanted. I am so, so grateful that he died peacefully in my arms and was buried with a gentle smile on his face, as though to ease our grief. So remember, this book started the week he died, and it ended the anniversary day of his death. So it's a story, it's a chronological story. So from gratefulness to remembering, called Relief from Remembering. In my dream, I feel as though I'm standing in a slow river rising gently with rain, falling on autumn color, too cold for comfort, too deep and numbing for escape. Water fills my ears and the nostrils until I finally stop breathing, free to sink into comforting stillness and relief from remembering he's gone. Thank you. And then back up to a little bit lighter one. Excuse me. Rumi is one of my favorite people to read, and this one was inspired by Rumi. You might recognize a little bit. It's called Being Human. This being human is an education. Does squirrel grieve? Does owl worry? Does blue jay outside this foggy window hold a grudge? I sit on my cushion with something like secular faith, a great mystery reassuring us morning light will come, sorrow will subside, the lives of squirrels and owls and blue jays are unfolding. We do not need to know their inner life. This being human is a seminar in kindness. So that was, thank you. That was one of the easier days. This poem, I will tell you, I should have mentioned it before the last one. I got tired of writing really sad poems, so I would draw 3 inspirational words. I call them beacon cards or angel cards to help me as a prompt. So the last poem had a few of those in there. This one addresses the reason why I allowed this work to come out from out from my office, really. It's called Ancient Sisterhood. Why do these mourning poems insist on pushing themselves out of my soul, like a moonflower seed that refuses to hide underground one more day when a sunbeam calls its name? Who summons these poems from my darkness? Why should I indulge precious time to capture them in turquoise ink? So many more important ways to spend my hours in daily tasks that must be done, in celebration of all things good, in service to anyone else but me. Even if one word I write eases the pain of a reluctant widow, offers her ancient sisterhood, I will be held, I will be healed too. And so I wait, like seed awaits its sunbeam, and push myself into light to write and write and write. So that's why I would keep writing. Let's see. Again, this one wasn't all about sorrow. It's called My Religion. Anticipating a day in the garden lifts me like a feather in wind. It is my sanctuary as surely a mosque and cathedral, chapel and temple are for others. Gratitude pours from my heart like life itself into every leaf and bud, every earthworm and honeybee, every autumn harvest and winter rest. Gardening is my religion. So that, if you were to read the book, you'd see that nature and critters are really important to me. And then back into the trough. One thing I hope that people grieving and mourning that first year realize it's not a straight line. It is, you'll be at the crest and you'll be in the trough for the whole year. So hopefully that comes through. This one's called, and this was, let's see, 6 + 3, 9 months after he had died. Edge of the Abyss. I thought by now tears would not fall every day. A reprieve, please, a healing, like wound becoming scab, scab becoming scar. My skin is a metaphor, tender, thin and fragile, tearing with slightest pressure, like my heart. The urge to jump into the abyss of that dark rectangle 6 feet deep to join him still surfaces like the urge of that forlorn sailor on edge of prow, fortunate enough to jump. So that's probably one of those days I didn't want to get out of bed. And then back to Rumi. This one's called Rumi is Right. This being widow is a journey, solitary, even in the midst of crowds, understood only by another who has buried the love of her life. Rumi says, this being human is a guest house. I say, this being widow is an empty house. Rumi says, welcome and entertain them, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. I say, Rumi is right. Perhaps today I will meet every sad guest at the door, invite them in, and be grateful. So thank you, Rumi. This poem, I love this poem because I love these turquoise chairs. It's called Turquoise Chairs. Uh-oh, can't look at Shawn. Just now, I wept about 2 turquoise chairs, chosen on a whim, reminiscent of grandmother's backyard on sultry summer days. These 2, placed just so on our deck, catch warm western light. 5 varieties of fern flourish along stream below as it sings its song en route to waterfall's crescendo. Sitting here over precious time, companionable silence our friend, holding hands or not, we loved each other beyond words. Finally, now, I can sit here alone, turquoise tears on cheek. I'm told it's a step in the right direction, whatever that is. So I knew I was supposed to be healing, and I was trying really hard. The last poem, I have no idea where I am on time. Am I okay? Yep. This is the last one. It's called This Day. And I wrote this poem on the anniversary of his death, 1-year anniversary of his death, as I was sitting by his grave on Mount Hood. This day, expectation sits on my shoulder like rock and feather. How to honor my love today. Bush tit sings from nearby trees. Symphony of this place reminds me over and over and over again that life is beautiful. Blossoms from garden we built adorn this grave, where the temple of my loved spirit becomes earth once again. Such is the nature of things, I know. Though my pain and loneliness sidetrack me for days, for months, for this entire year. Healing your grief, the shaman said to him 14 years ago, is imperative. I am healing today because I am here on the mountain that holds his bones. Embracing mystery, letting go, holding him close in my heart, in my cells, in my soul. Goodbye, beautiful husband. Your love is tucked so sweetly, so comfortably forever in my heart. With that, I can go on. I can feel joy. The urge to jump into the abyss, like that fortunate sailor, is gone today. So anyway, that's part of my journey of mourning. Solitary light.
Thank you, Priscilla. Oh my goodness, I should have been more prepared to cry. I do love how your poems are so open, how they come from this place of vulnerability. You know, I've read a lot of poems through the years, written a few that touch on grief, and but your book is unique in how you really do take us through that oh so fragile first year, and you take us through the heartbreak, the breakdown, the breaking through moments. And it really is a gift to anyone who finds themselves overwhelmed by grief and who is really struggling to find that light so that they don't jump into the abyss. Thank you for writing these little beacons and for sharing them with us today. Beautiful.
Thank you, Shawn.
Our last featured poet today is Julie Potiker, the author of Gentle Currents, Poems of Pause and Peace, a poetry collection written as a refuge for the heart that also includes watercolor paintings by San Diego artist Edward Kane, who's with us today. Julie is a mindfulness expert, author, and much to her own delight, a debut poet at the age of 65. Her journey to poetry feels like a joyful surprise, arising after a decade of helping others bring more peace and wellness into their lives through their Mindful Methods for Life programs. Her first two books, Snap from Chaos to Calm and Life Falls Apart, but You Don't Have to, are available in print and audiobook format. Julie's work has been featured in the Oprah Magazine, Costco Connection, AARP, and major news outlets including NBC, CBS, and Fox. She is proof that creativity can bloom at any stage of life. Please welcome Julie Potiker.
Thanks so much, Shawn. I have to say that that's a really nice introduction, but I am an emerging poet. I am brand spanking new at this poetry thing, and I'm really honored to be reading next to Angelika and Debbie and Priscilla. Your work is gorgeous, and Angelika, the subtitle of both of my nonfiction books are Chaos to Calm. So how funny that you're Chaos to Calm. We're all about that today. And Shawn, for those of you that haven't seen the copy of this book, these are Edward Kane's paintings. Edward, you can wave. But Shawn is the one that decided, oh, you know what? I like how these all look together, and let's give it a purple background, and it's gorgeous. And I also have to say, because I'm a little bit insecure still, because I'm new at this, that Shawn helped me edit some of the poems because I was adding new poems after James Cruz really helped me. And then Shawn helped me. And now I have this guy, Ron Salisbury, who is teaching this 25 session class that I'm learning from. And then Shawn said, why don't you buy Ellen Bass's revision class, which I did, and it's incredibly helpful. So I'm just happy to be here sharing what I'm sharing. I'm sure collection 2 will be more literary than collection 1, and collection 3 will be more literary than collection 2. May I live and be well. All right, here goes. So the first poem is called Self-Care. I'm a mindful self-compassion teacher. Some of these poems are in that vein. Self-care. Self-care is in my spine, etched in my vertebrae after a decade of teaching mindful self-compassion. It keeps my skeleton from collapsing in a heap on the earth when disaster strikes. It raises me a little taller when joy, awe, or ecstasy bursts out of me like a hose aimed at a 5-alarm fire. It saved my life, this practice of seeing and allowing all of me, the jagged and sticky bits included. It orients me to a wider lens, my feet in other shoes, with an impulse to help, if I can. The nuts and bolts change based on circumstance, but there are constants. The breath, feet rooted on solid ground, hand on heart, prayers spooling out, connecting with people who love me and whom I love, and remembering I belong, I am enough, I am complete, and so are you. This next poem is set in our backyard in Idaho. We split our time in San Diego and Idaho. Aspen trees. The pale gray trunks welcome me, their black eyes and thick painterly designs, thousands of delicate arms swaying in the wind. A blink in time later, the branches are decked in shimmering green clothes. Millions of sequins dancing in the sun. Above the soft roar of the river, birds flaunting spangled dresses in flashes of lemon, ruby, and emerald communicate in bird language. I wish I could discern what type of bird belongs to each trill, but even if I could, and I might, their stories remain hidden, a secret that fills my heart with wonder and what feels like hope. This next one is set in San Diego in the backyard. It's called Loretta. There is a mound of earth down below the pool equipment shed, surrounded by canary palms, a few red bottle brush trees, and 3 tree stumps that invite me to sit a while next to the shovel, standing at attention. The earth pile is a rich brown. It may have worm casings to cover the seedlings. Beds caged now, the squirrel and rabbit all-night diner closed for business. Cucumbers, some as big as my forearm, some more delicately curved into the letter C. Beans, plum color, pale yellow, and sage green, their sprouting stalks a luscious tangle. It is on this flourishing land that I opened the plastic bag with the gold tag and the name Loretta. The aged sister-in-law of a friend at a loss, this task too big to handle. I'll do it, I say, without hesitation. How could I not? Her white sand in stark relief, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, whispering the words of a prayer as I work the shovel, mixing her into her final resting place. Now, I have to say I read that in San Diego at an event, and so I had the piece of paper of it by accident in the kitchen on the counter, and my husband saw it and he freaked out. He was like, "You mixed somebody's ashes in our backyard?" Like, completely. "Why didn't you tell me?" And I said, "Because of this." Because of this reaction. Oh, yeah, marriage. It's good. It's good. This next one is called Sterling Superstition. I need to wear something of hers, a silver chain around my neck, links warm on my collarbones, silver bands cuffing my wrist, perhaps a ring on my index finger. Her hands were thicker than mine, spotted and vein just the same, but weightier. I'm undressed if I fail to do it. There's a feeling of unrest, of fear if I lose the connection. Something ominous might befall me. Don't forget a little sweater. Don't leave the house with holes in your panties. Wear a slip. I know the effort it takes to be a mother. What a crapshoot. How much you can't control. I wrote a poem a few years back about her rage. I'm afraid to publish it. She's been gone 7 years, and fear remains an ingredient in the recipe of my grief. To be fair, there are other ingredients, good ones, that honor her memory, her fierce love, brilliance, creativity, work ethic, parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme, without the cayenne pepper. Heat reserved for the women closest to her, those birthed from her womb. I wear her silver chain today, on this Mother's Day. Postscript to that, it's now been 10 years, and I can't find the cayenne pepper. I think it's gone. So I think that grief really does mellow over time. This next poem is called My Father's Wristwatch, because you can't do the mother without the father. Silently, it slipped off the narrow ledge onto a nest of towels on the bathroom floor. I bowed low to collect it, reflexively pressing it to my lips as if fulfilling an ancient commandment, to hold something holy against my body, to consecrate and rededicate my father's wristwatch, my pulse, even now. And this is my father's wristwatch. I don't take it off. And this is actually my mother's chain. Okay, this next one is called Holding Court. It's from the backyard here in San Diego. Holding Court. Scattered about, western sycamore leaves forever remind me of book pages. Undone, unglued, unloved, discarded. Feeling this dip in mood, I make my way to the caged garden below in search of something delicious. Bright green cauliflower lifts my spirits. I wrestle it out of the rich soil with the help of kitchen scissors. It's 5 p.m. now, so the buzzsaws, trucks, and workmen's chatter have silenced. 2 heads of cauliflower filling my hands, I'm stopped in my tracks by the sounds and sights of happy hour in full swing in the scrub pine. Standing stock still, I search for movement along the branches. Birds the size of pine cones, and dark, smooth pine cones that look like birds, tucked in tight among the spiky needles in the fading light. Here's another mindful self-compassion type poem, sort of like a teaching poem. It's called Window Boxes. The picture window that seems to support the roof of my house is my window of tolerance. I like to imagine it has a wide and deep ledge, weathered planks of wood, painted a deep cerulean blue, softly faded through the years. In my imagination, the window boxes on the faded and chipped windowsills are filled with rich and loamy soil, unaccountably alive. Each seed I push into the moist earth is a thought, a mood, a gratitude. I choose to plant seeds whose feather-light packets say love, hope, compassion, peace, ease, faith, trust, mercy, and harmony in the topsoil of my mind. When I notice a delicate green shoot making its way up into the light, my intention is to nurture it, to cultivate it. I focus my attention there with an attitude of curiosity as I examine what's come up and what it needs to thrive. The worry, anger, fear, and despair seeds must drift in on the breeze, for I certainly did not choose them. yet they are here too. Acknowledging their existence, I try to be gentle, prying under roots to understand their origin story. They send crucial messages about the state of the planet and its inhabitants and what must be done to help. So they must not be extinguished. They too deserve their own garden box that can be visited when I have the fierce compassion necessary to dig in with hands, heart, and soul. Okay, I have two more. This next one's really short and it's set at the dog beach. It's called Joy Has Four Legs, Doesn't Ask Permission. No one told them about wars or the price of eggs. Mutts and purebreds of every flavor run without hesitation, as if the world has always been this open, this forgiving. Wellington leaps and sprints with every dog chasing a ball. Madeline rolls her old bones in the wet sand. One black lab charges the waves with a frisbee in his mouth. Another digs fiercely, sand flying above his head, both entirely certain of purpose. Just now, just wind, just sand and salt, and the miracle of tails wagging. Nothing in them resists. This is how healing looks: wild, sandy, and grinning. So Shawn, I could end there. I don't know what my time is, or I could read the last poem in the book. It's been a long time for people, so I just want to be sensitive about that. What says
Well,
you?
I think your dog poem was a delightful poem to end us on. So,
I agree.
and I know your voice is getting tired as well because you've been under the weather. So, thank you for this today. Let me just officially welcome you to the fabulous journey we've all embarked on, which is writing poetry. We're glad to have you aboard. And and what could be a more timely collection than poems of pause and peace? I, for one, and I know I'm not alone in this, feel pretty overwhelmed by everything happening in our world right now. And listening to you share these meditative balms, bringing us back to nature, bringing us back to ourselves, has been a real treat this afternoon. So thank you so much for sharing, Julie.
Thank you. And most of the poems are nature poems. I had to pull out the ones that weren't.
So it's a lovely collection, and especially with Edward's art, it really is a treat. Um, Anyway, let's have a giant round of applause for all of our readers today. I'd like to thank our four talented poets, Debbie Hall, Angelika, Quirk, Priscilla Bernard Wieden, and Julie Potiker. And thank you, our audience, for supporting our authors and joining us for another edition of the Poetry Box Live. It's so nice to gather here in our Zoom room and share this art form we love. How lucky we are to be able to do this. We will be back for a new show on Saturday, April 11th to celebrate new books by Susan Willis Johnson, Casey Robb, Sharon Black, and Joanne Kennedy Frazier. It will be our last show before our summer break, so you don't want to miss it. And as I mentioned earlier, we are open for our 9th annual chapbook contest through midnight tomorrow, March 15th. Our guest judge this year is the amazing, inspiring poet Rosemary Watola Tromer. You can find all the guidelines and details at thepoetrybox.com. And while you're there, feel free to subscribe to our newsletter. There's a sign-up form at the bottom of each webpage. Thanks again for joining us today. Have a fantastic rest of your weekend and go eat some pie. It's Pie Day.